Glenda, thank you very much for the introduction. And if you could have talked Bill into doing this presentation, that would have been marvelous. So welcome, everyone. During the Live Well section, we have talked about a number of things. The themes that we have focused on over time have included a lot of topics that you might expect. The importance of focusing on continuous personal development. Similarly, focusing on physical and emotional well-being. We've learned ways to become more productive, although I have to say some of us aren't so good at that. But nonetheless, it's not that Kathy Sexton hasn't taught us a lot, or tried to at any rate. And in all three of our segments, we talk a lot about the value of relationships. And it's that latter topic today that I want to focus on with you and have a discussion with you about, but from a slightly different lens than we normally think about it. And that is applying customer service to everyday living in order to strengthen our personal relationships. When I think about establishing relationships, there's a lot to it, a lot more than I think we really realize. I'm going to go out on a limb here today and say to you that in all of our circumstances, having positive relationships with our customers, with our employees, if we have them, with contractors, with colleagues, is critical to our ability to have business success. And I think most of you would agree with that. It's just common sense. I'm suggesting to you today that the same values and behaviors that we apply when we're focusing on our professional lives are equally as important when we're focusing on our personal lives. Having good relationships, maintaining good relationships requires an ongoing commitment to demonstrating the behaviors that we want to see reflected. Said a little differently, Dale, we are teaching one another how to behave all the time. And there's an endless amount of information out there about how to provide effective customer service, things to say, things to do, things not to say, things not to do. And equally, there's a lot of information about relationships. You can go out and see Dr. Phil, and you can go out and see a whole lot of people who are professional business relationship consultants. So today, we're not going to focus on a ton of things. We're going to focus on 3 behaviors that I think are critical to providing effective and quality customer service, and that are core to establishing and maintaining personal relationships. So establishing trust and providing personal recognition and apologizing. We're going to start with establishing trust. And I'm going to ask you all first to give me some feedback about what you think of when you think about establishing trust. What are behaviors that are important to that? What steps would you take if you're trying to establish a trusting relationship with someone that you care about in particular? Anybody? Richard. Do what you say you're going to do. Bill. Service after the sale. Les. Absolutely. Open and honest communications. Kathy.
Being authentic.
Being authentic. Dale. Giving trust in order to get trust. Listening skills. It's a little scary because here we go. Listen and communicate. And notice that listen is first. All too often, our tendency is to start talking, right? We're nervous, we're trying to get something fixed, so we start jabbering. It's really important to understand what the problem is before you try to solve it. So asking good questions, getting clarity, making sure that you understand what the issue is before you begin to fall on your sword and start babbling is really important. And whatever it is you choose to communicate, you need to make good on it. You need to be true to your word. There's nothing worse than saying that you're going to do something and then not doing it. And so I know that it's kind of easy to think about that from a professional perspective, but it is equally as true, maybe even more true, in our personal lives, in our personal relationships. And we know pretty quickly if we're about to disappoint someone. We know often, hopefully, before they do. And when we do, we need to act on it fast. We need to be asking for help sometimes, asking for forgiveness. But if we're in a situation where we just think, okay, well, we'll get by it, we're going to make it okay, that rarely works. So we need to be upfront about it when we're about to really disappoint somebody, especially somebody that we care about. And when we do that, we need to be very specific about how we're going to solve the problem. What are we going to do? Now, you heard some of this actually from our prior two presenters. Slightly different lens, but the same kind of messages. It actually, we didn't even think about that. We didn't talk about any of this. So making sure that we're very clear about what it is we're going to do, and then, of course, making good on it is important. Providing personal recognition. There's a quote that I found by a Mr. or Miss Unknown that's to the effect of, a person who feels appreciated will always do more than is expected. And isn't that true? When we feel acknowledged, isn't that energizing, especially if it's a public acknowledgement, we've done something well, we've made a contribution to someone's success, we've made someone feel appreciated and feel good. Don't we then want to continue with that same behavior? Keep on forging ahead with respect to being successful with that? It's critical. It's really an important aspect to building a relationship and to sustaining and strengthening a relationship. And when that compliment or that praise is specific, it's all the more meaningful. Lori said it, good job. Okay, if you're 2 years old, that might work. But not so much when you're pushing 68. I need clarity. Just saying. Yeah. Oh, good. So the specificity suggests that you're paying attention and that the person matters to you, that it's important. And it's always going to feel a whole lot better when you have something specific to say when you're providing that praise. We never should just go on the idea that, well, he or she should have known. It never works. That's a little bit like in the workplace when you're dealing with someone who's having a performance issue and the supervisor says to you, Lisa should have known. Well, you know what? Your obligation is to tell Lisa. So we need to be very specific, and praise is a good thing. From a slightly different perspective, catching people doing things right. It's easy to take for granted all of the things that go well, just as the way it's supposed to be. It's just the expectation. And what that can lead to all too often is we focus on all of the little irritants. Well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. You leave the room and you don't turn the lights out. So, that's just defeating. You end up in a situation where all we're doing is focusing on the negative. Catching people doing things right feels a whole heck of a lot better, and it's really not all that hard. Saying thank you. So I'm not talking here about the polite thank you for holding the door, thank you for passing the ketchup, that kind of thing. All that's important, of course. But what I'm talking about here is the occasional thank you that recognizes, that is special, that recognizes how much you appreciate the way your spouse or partner or your really good friend has helped you, or how much you just appreciate their support, their friendship. So making a thank you special is just really an act of kindness that can make somebody's day go so much better. And it's not hard. None of this is hard. In fact, it's hardly rocket science. But it does take intentionality. And I think it's too easy for us to just fall into this rut of taking all of these things for granted. We wouldn't do it in our workplace. We wouldn't ever think of having a customer, or presume a customer, or we shouldn't anyway, that a customer would, oh my gosh, that we would presume a customer feels appreciated. There's absolutely no reason that we should therefore feel that a spouse or a partner, or somebody we care a lot about, should just know that he or she is appreciated. So we need to apply the same thought process that we do instinctively often at work in our personal lives. And the last is the apology. In Professor Randy Pausch's book, The Last Lecture, he dedicates an entire chapter to the topic of apologizing. And he entitled that chapter, "A Bad Apology is Worse Than No Apology." An apology, making an apology is a choice. And when we apologize, if we do it with sincerity, with some real intentionality, with a commitment to a change in behavior, that apology can go a long way to remedying a bad situation, helping to begin to repair the damage that we've created. And I would suggest to you that having a process is a way to take emotion out of that apology, and it will assist us in getting done what we want to get done, which is, frankly, to make improvement, not cause further damage. So from a process perspective, I ran across an article a couple of years ago written by an attorney whose name I don't really know how to pronounce, so I'll just leave it up there. And the crux of the article was on the Midas touch apology technique. It's very straightforward, and in case you can't figure this out, y'all are going to practice it before we're done. So, M is for mistake. Acknowledging, admitting that I made a mistake. Not just, I'm sorry, but I made a mistake. I is for injury. That mistake caused you harm. So being specific about what the damage has been done because of the mistake that we made. D is differently. What am I going to do differently going forward? How am I going to behave differently? What will I do? A is for amends. What step am I going to take to make sure that you understand that my apology is heartfelt? I'm not doing this just because I know I'm supposed to. I'm doing this. I am telling you that I apologize for what I've done and for the harm that has caused you, and I'm going to do X. And in my book, X is fix the problem. And S stands for stop talking. Because our tendency, especially if we haven't thought through the message we're trying to give, is we keep on talking, and usually that's when we get into trouble. We start blaming. We started with excuses, the whole "I'm sorry, but" kind of apology, which really doesn't go very far. In fact, it's pretty insulting. And sometimes we even start to blame the person that we're apologizing to for the problem. So thinking this through and thinking about a way to apologize, well, it sounds like, we do it all the time. We may do it all the time, we just don't do it very well. So on the ends of your tables, face down, some of you have turned them over already because you're very efficient, there are some scenarios, 3 different apologies, and the different colored papers, a different version. So I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. I'm so sorry, I'm so bad, I'm so sorry, I feel so terrible, I had such a bad thing about this. And then the last one is, sorry for being late, but you picked an inconvenient time. So let's take a few minutes at your table, and if you would work together, walk through how would you apologize using the Midas touch technique. And so it's all mapped out for you, and we'll give you a few minutes to do that, and then we're going to ask for you to share with us what you've gotten done.
The right calendar. So my Outlook
I think
calendar
she
has.
wants us to address this up here and talk about
Okay, are we ready?
Okay. All right.
Any volunteers to share what you've come up with? Les?
Hello? Ooh, okay.
Wow, okay.
All right, well, obviously, the mistake is acknowledging that we're being late. My mistake caused you harm. We say, I know your time is valuable, and my being late is disrespectful. What I'm going to do differently is make sure that I give myself plenty of time in the future and ask Alexa to help me stay true to my promise. And amends is going to set my watch ahead next time. We're going out, and I'm going to pay for lunch.
Great, thank you very much. How about the I'm so sorry, I feel so bad scenario? Who's got that? No one? You willing to share what you came up with?
So on acknowledging the mistake, I'm so sorry I was late. And oftentimes there's a compounding thing that happens with being late, which is you didn't notify the person and say I'm running late. So so sorry I'm 10 minutes late, and I didn't let you know that I was going to be late. And so I know that as a result, your schedule is disrupted, and this meeting may either have to run shorter or we may have to run long, which will only exacerbate the problem. Next time, I will notify you the moment I know I'm running late, so you can adjust accordingly. And you know, Alexis and setting watches and all that stuff was similar to what we were doing. And what was our amends? I missed that. Yeah, or buy you the coffee and all of that also.
All right, thank you. What about the I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings? What table, which table has one of that? That one. Oh, come on. All right, in the back.
Yeah, this one's a little vague, but I'm sorry if I have hurt your feelings is probably not an appropriate way because it puts a person on the defense. So we were saying M for I acknowledge that I have hurt your feelings. I, the injury, it appears that this has made you very sad and how that's caused harm. D, differently going forward, I would love to check in with you before emotions start escalating. And then the A, amends, that the heartfelt apology, could you share with me more information about, or more narrative to explain to me how this felt for you, so I can understand what the trigger is, and just kind of what's the narrative, what's the story, is there a history, kind of thing like that. So allowing time for the sharing.
Okay, thank you very much. So you see that it isn't hard, and in some ways it's the kind of thing that you might do. But in the first one in particular, that if I hurt your feelings suggests, well, maybe. I'm not so sure I really did. This I'm so sorry, this I feel bad, all about you, isn't it? As opposed to the person that you're supposed to be apologizing to. And of course the being late and then blaming the person for setting the time, pretty obvious. So hopefully you'll find the Midas Touch technique helpful as you think about in your personal lives and even professionally. So applying customer service to everyday living is about how our actions make others feel and how we are teaching others how to behave, a choice we each make every day to live well. Thank you.